99% chance by the end of this year be talking about, if not actually going back onto a gold standard.
Well, Bix, when we talk about there being that much hidden gold on the planet, it really does sound preposterous because, as my friend Stefan has pointed out, if gold is that plentiful, then maybe we should all start hoarding copper, or certainly more and more silver. I mean, if we're really serious about the fact that there could be that much hidden gold on the planet and that at some point in the future that, those gold stocks may be revealed in some sort of effort to back currency again, it just doesn't compute. And I guess the final takeaway is silver is definitely the place to be then, physical silver over physical gold.
Yes, but you got to remember also, as far as those people worried about gold investments, yes, there's a lot of gold out there, but 2 million tons is a lot different than the amount of financial products, derivatives, dollars, bonds, just created out of thin air and paper. You'll do fine with your gold investment. You will. Even if there's tons and tons and tons of gold out there, there is massively more fraudulent financial products, so that in relation to your investment today, yes, gold's a good investment. Silver's 50 times better, but gold, you'll still do fine with your gold because the real fraud is not the gold. The real fraud is the amount of paper and electronic assets that have been created in this world in the last 30 years. Prior to 30 years ago, there was no such thing as an electronic asset. Now, everything is electronic. Your savings account, your checking account, all of it. Remember back in the 1600s when they had the tulip bubble? Everybody was buying tulips like they're going out of style. They were even using them as money. But in the end, they figured out these are just tulips. What would the tulip people say to us today who believe that electronic blips are assets? That's the scariest thought you can imagine. If you have a checking account, a savings account, a 401k, you name it, if it's an electronic blip, it is nothing.
Understood. But let me ask you this, as it relates to 600 or 700 or 800, 900 trillion dollars in derivatives, in a reset of this system, in any reset of the clock back to a fair and orderly and honest system, all those derivatives should just be thrown out. I mean, those should be disavowed. I mean, it's the same reason Greece should free itself from the banksters by, defaulting on the debt, returning to the drachma, getting away from the Eurozone, reinstating its sovereignty.
Yeah, but remember, all these banks are interconnected so that, one bank goes down and every single bank, every single mutual fund, they'll all go down. I mean, the interconnection is amazing. And, it's not just the derivatives. U.S. dollars are being printed, $100 bills, it's called the super note. They've been being printed around the world. These 1934 bonds, the U.S. and the Fed and the BIS printed massive amounts of those, more than the amount of gold that supposedly these governments held on deposit. Every single avenue of new asset creation is just has gone way overboard. And that's kind of the whole concept of the road to Ruta theory, in that in the 1960s there was that paper called On the Road to the Golden Age that said the best way to return to a gold standard is to print and make electronic blips of as many assets as possible before you crash the system, because when it all crashes and you have to go back to a more sound form of money, there's going to be very little building. There's going to be very little military infrastructure. There'll be very little. There'll be no more globalization. So there's a lot going on here, but the massive amounts of monetary instruments has been going on for 100 years, and they're all fraud, not just derivatives.
Okay, now before we let you go, I want to talk about something very, very important. Let's get back to Ron Paul, and let's talk about military patriots. I posted something over the weekend called New World Order Puppet Masters versus Military Patriots equals Revolution. And the reason I titled it that, the reason I wanted to have that conversation with Bob Chapman of the International Forecaster, Bix, is because I'm inspired by the fact that military men and women across this country are standing up on behalf of the Constitution and standing up loudly for Ron Paul. 70% of the military at this point supports Ron Paul, as exemplified by the donations. He gets more donations from active military men than all other GOP candidates and Obama combined. And we're seeing a sea change here. On Monday, we saw military veterans march in a very dramatic way on Washington and turn their backs in unison on the White House and on the foreign policy of this president and the military-industrial complex. Now, for me, nothing could be more hopeful than to have seen that. What's your take?
it is amazing, but the real important things happening right at the top of the top military generals in the United States know what's going on. They know they're working with the good guys to make the transition to Ron Paul, and they are not going to let our country go down. So it's not just the guys on the ground. It's also the guys at the very top of the pyramid, and they're being closely watched by the good guys in Congress. So, it's all coming down to March, April, May timeframe where I'm not exactly sure how it's all going to go down, but most likely we'll be looking at a monetary crash and then either just a resurgence or large wave of Ron Paul coming on in and taking out any chance for anybody else to get elected, or even the possibility of a special election where Obama's taken out for whatever reason, if it's his birth certificate or you can name 50 things he's done unconstitutionally that you can remove him from office for. But I think they want to go to the election in November to have a more peaceful type of transition. But if push comes to shove and the bad guys, start war with Iran or something like that, you'll see the top military brass come in and say, we've had enough. We're going to take down the bad guys now, take Obama out of office, and then go to a special election right there.
Okay, well then let's explore just a little bit this springtime meltdown that you're talking about. Can you articulate that a little further? Are you predicting a worldwide economic collapse in the spring, in that March, April, May time period? Is that what you're thinking? Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, and it'll be, most likely it'll be started in Europe, maybe Greece defaulting, or the downgrades of these banks that I think it was S&P or Moody's came out with 100 and something downgrades that they're going to take. This is a huge deal because the big derivative is not gold and silver and credit default swaps. The big derivative is interest rate swaps. And if you look at the global derivative complex, it's all about interest rate swaps. Well, credit downgrades will trigger a lot of these interest rate swaps, and that is the weapon of mass financial destruction that Buffett talks about. Once that is done, you're going to see massive default everywhere you turn for every single bank, and that it will be a situation where you try to go to the bank and it won't be open. So get your cash out, buy as much gold and silver as you can, but also have some cash to ride you through your bank being closed or all banks being closed. And hopefully, I'm hoping here that the good guys have a plan for a more peaceful transition, and that's what they're trying to do by making it a true election. But, if the bad guys start throwing up false flags, all bets are off.
Okay, and on the day that we're having this conversation, it's the 21st. We see gold up over $30 an ounce, silver's up over $1 an ounce. And as you and I both know, Pastor Lindsey Williams has been saying for years now, the only thing you can trust is gold and silver, essentially the money of the elite. At $34 an ounce, silver is still dirt cheap based on any metrics of the money supply that we look at, especially if you look at shadow stats. John Williams would say that the inflation adjustment true numbers for silver should be $200. If you look at other statistics he uses, he can make an argument for $517. Can you impress on the audience that's listening right now, Bix, that silver at these prices is a subsidized deal by the criminal banks? It's a steal of a deal for people at $34 or $40 or $50 because of where it should be, were it not manipulated?
Well, you're right, but I'd also add that now's the time to be careful. Make sure when you buy your silver, you get it in the physical form. You take it home with you, because when the financial chaos starts, who knows? They can put the price of silver at $1 million or at $0 with their computers, and then they can shut the market down. So if you're sitting with your physical silver in your possession, in your home, wherever you have access to it, you are much better off than anybody who holds it anywhere else. And you can't think about price anymore because we're so close to that moment where the banking system melts down. They, meaning those who rig the market with computers every day, can put the price pretty much anywhere they want with a flash crash and things like that. So, yes, buy. Now is the time to buy, because there's not much time left where you ever will be able to buy silver until after all this crash, works its way through, and you will, it may be the last chance to preserve your wealth, to get physical silver, physical gold in your possession where no one else can touch it.
Well, Bix, before we let you go, too, do you want to talk about any of the short-term dangers here in the silver and gold price? Silver specifically, we could talk about the SLV, we could talk about J.P. Morgan's short position, things like that.
Well, there's good news coming out of SLV in that BlackRock is forcing the shorts to close up their shorts. So the SLV short position is getting smaller and smaller because it was massively, fraudulent and manipulative. But on the same level, the COMEX short position on the J.P. Morgan side is starting to grow again. So anything is possible. Now's the time to be safe. If you don't have physical silver, buy it at any price. If you can get your hands on it. Most likely, if they try another slam when the financial crisis hits, and they try to keep these markets going, which is a possibility, they can slam it, wherever they want to set their computers. So just keep in mind that physical silver, the price of physical silver has not been fully realized its true fair market value since, who knows when, maybe the 60s when the price was set. But if you're in this for the long haul, which you should be, buy physical silver, stick it away. If I were to buy today, which I plan on buying at the end of the month if I can, I'd probably put half of it in silver now and then wait for the crash to see if I, can get a lower price. But right now is the time to get your physical in your own possession.
Well, that, folks, is why we like to talk to Bix Weir on a regular basis. Bix, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Do you have anything else you want to add before we let you go?
No, just keep up the fight, and you're doing great work over there.
Yeah, back at you, man. All right. Thanks, Bix.
All right, John.
Well, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe and keep stacking. Good night.